Hi then guys, and welcome to episode 1 of a brand new review series for Gran Turismo 6 called Pumping Iron. And this series is specifically to review the classic muscle cars of Gran Turismo 6. Now there are some cars which will not be included in this series. The racing versions of the muscle cars will not be included. We will not be including NASCARs, and we will not be including modern muscle. These cars are only from the years of 1980 back, or the 1980s back to as early as you want, basically. And what better way of starting a muscle car series than by reviewing one of the most iconic and popular muscle cars ever created. This is, of course, the Dodge Charger, specifically the 440 Magnum RT. This is from 1970. It's quite a large car. It has quite a distinctive shape. The bonnet and boot, or trunk, are pretty much equal lengths, which is quite unusual for a muscle car. Most muscle cars tend to have either a longer boot or a longer bonnet. Longer boot in the case of cars like the 64 Impala, or a longer bonnet in the case of something like a Cuda or a Challenger. But this car actually has roughly equal bonnet and boot lengths. Why am I talking about this? Who cares about the length of the bonnet and the boot? Well, here's why. This car, and this is quite rare in a muscle car, has a perfect 50-50 weight distribution. And that is rare in a muscle car. And it also means that this car naturally lends itself toward track use, especially competitive track use. And competitive, this car certainly is. Now, 440 refers to the cubic inches, and for those unfamiliar with the conversion system, a 440 works out to a 7.2 litre in British money. This engine, fully tuned, puts out 842 horsepower, and that's supercharged. It also puts out just under 950 pound-feet of torque, which is one of the things that categorises a muscle car, having a huge amount of torque, typically more torque than horsepower. But this car's torque is phenomenal, even among the muscle car world, having almost as much torque as a Le Mans racing diesel engine, which for a classic petrol is pretty impressive. Now, weight-wise, this car is actually quite deceptive because it's a very big, bulky looking car. It looks like it weighs about 3 tons. This car is officially well over 6 feet wide, over 17 feet long, so it's a big car. But the weight is deceptively good. With the full weight loss package, this car only weighs 1,321 kilos, which is shockingly light for a car of its size and overall appearance. Now, price-wise, it's a 75 grand muscle car. So it's actually pretty well priced. It's not the cheapest of muscle cars, but it's far from being the most expensive. So value for money is actually very good on this model. The power to weight ratio is also excellent on the Charger. It puts out 637 horsepower per tonne, which is very impressive for a classic car. In terms of straight line performance, top end acceleration isn't as strong as some of the other muscle cars, but off the line and mid-range especially, it is very, very quick. Top end performance, you're looking around the 240, 245 mile per hour region without NOS, so pretty quick. Not the quickest of muscle cars, but among the quicker models. There are plenty of muscle cars that this can beat in a straight line. And in terms of handling, as we already said, it has a perfect 50-50 weight split, which does lend itself toward handling. But how does it handle? Because being over 6 feet wide, over 17 feet long, surely the handling would struggle to keep up with modern cars, especially something like a tuned Japanese import. Well, actually no, it handles really, really well. Now there is a downside to this car's handling, and it's not really the handling itself, and it's not specifically speaking a downside. It can be under certain circumstances, and that is the sheer ground area that this car covers. It's a big car. Now, I'm not talking about weight. As we said, it's not that heavy. But the sheer size of this car can make it a bit awkward obtaining the lead in some tighter track racing, especially if your opponents are also using muscle cars, because muscle cars take up a lot of road space. So unless you plan on just using your bumper to get yourself to the lead, which I do not condone, it's going to be difficult on some tracks to get enough space to legitimately overtake your opponents. Now, that isn't really an issue on tracks like Sierra, the Nürburgring or Lasarte, but it can be more of an issue on tighter tracks such as city circuits, Monaco, Laguna Seca potentially, Ascari, that kind of track. It can sometimes be an issue. Obviously, it's not an issue when you're on your own, but it can be in racing. But that's an issue that quite a few muscle cars do suffer from, so it's not something to put you off buying the car. It's just something you'd need to know if you do plan on buying one, specifically to use it competitively. In terms of how this car's range, in terms of PP and how competitive it is across the board, it's actually very good. Now, fully tuned, this car sits in the high 590 region of PP. And at that PP level, obviously you can get some pretty decent racing cars. So if you're looking for this car to be as competitive as possible, I would say look more in the 500 to 550 PP region, because at that level you have significantly more power than many of the other cars can, and the straight line performance, especially acceleration, really does give you an advantage. Overall then, the Charger is a very, very good all-round muscle car. It's one of the best handling. It has one of the best weight distribution. And the best thing about this car overall is just how all-round good it is in all areas. Great handling, great performance, sounds good, looks good, and it's very fun to drive. It also makes a great drift car, a great drag car. It's just a winner all around. In terms of its downside, well, we already said, that's just the sheer size of the car. Can be an issue. Not necessarily for everyone, but it can be. Overall then, it's definitely one of the best muscle cars overall, I would say. Not necessarily the best at any specific thing, but it's so good at everything that it works out to be one of the best. So I will put all this car's specs in the video description for you to check it out if you need to. And that's it for this episode, so I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.